I had a few people ask me if last year's useful, functional Bluetooth-enabled stylus from the S24 Ultra would fit into the non-Bluetooth-enabled stylus slot from this year's newer S25 Ultra. The answer to that question is 99% yes, but it does not click in that last 1%, making it entirely useless. I imagine that the internals also lack the tiny wireless charging coil that charges up the S Pen, so either way it wouldn't be getting any juice. But we can check on that theory as we dig around inside. Samsung says that this year their vapor chamber is 40% larger and they have a new TIM thermal interface material connecting the Snapdragon 8 Elite to that larger vapor chamber. All cool things that deserve to be seen by humanity. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and let's get inside. We learned in the durability test video that the rings around the camera units themselves are just glued in place and removable by razor blade. I really don't think these rings will ever fall off on their own, but it is an interesting design choice. To get the glass out in one piece, I'm going to use a lot of hot air. This softens the IP68 water-resistant adhesive under the glass, allowing me to use a large blue suction cup to lift up and slide my razor blade underneath, slicing through all that adhesive. I also just realized I let my $9.99 jerry rig knife sale go on for far too long, and I'll have to bump that price back to $14.99 at some point today. With the adhesive cut away, we get our first glimpse at the internals of Samsung's latest flagship. Just like always, the camera lens housing is indeed still attached to the backside of the glass, so swapping out any broken camera lenses will require popping off those metal circles like we saw during the durability test. The next thing to take out as we make our way to the vapor chamber is the 15-watt wireless charger, which, like compared to the 50-watt wireless charger OnePlus gave us this year, this one is just kinda lackluster. Samsung's gotta know that if you fall asleep, you lose the lead, and I feel like they might be snoozing. The lower plastics have 6 silver Phillips head screws, luckily they're all the same size. The upper brackets and plastics have 11 screws of their own, before the large metal plate can come off of the main board, letting us unplug the battery just like a little Lego. With the battery disconnected, it is a tad safer to start removing the other components, like the lower stereo loudspeaker, with its red waterproofing ring and waterproofing mesh. It also has plenty of balls inside. These balls help the speaker sound bigger than it actually is. I'll take out the SIM card tray next. I'm still slightly bitter about the no expandable memory thing, and then I can unsnap the 3 long extension ribbons that go from the lower board, over the battery, to the main board. Now, the real reason that the older Bluetooth S Pens won't work on the newer S25 is mostly because it just doesn't fit. However, I can't entirely rule out a Bluetooth S Pen upsell at some point, since for some reason Samsung has still included the inductive charger over the S Pen dock. This could of course just be here to sense if the S Pen is inside the phone or not. However, if we look at the same inductive charger out of the Samsung S24 Ultra from last year all the way back to the Note 10, which also had an S Pen that needed charging, they look nearly identical. So it's not impossible that it is capable of charging up an S Pen. The S25 Ultra appears to be able to give power, although the S Pen with no battery cannot receive it. And Samsung might upsell a Bluetooth-enabled, battery-included S Pen in the future. You can even see right here on my X-ray skin the exact point where the coils of the S Pen sit under the inductive charger. The X-ray skins are almost cooler than the phone itself. But if we look at the teardown skin instead of the X-ray skin, we can get a better look at the inductive coil from the S24 last year. You might be like, hey Jerry, did you just put the S24 teardown skin on the back of the S25 glass? And yes, it's not my fault Samsung didn't change anything. But by the time you're watching this, the real S25 skins should be finished and live at the link in the description. One really cool thing that Samsung has done this year is with the battery. And no, they didn't increase the capacity or charging speed or anything, but they did get rid of the battery adhesive entirely, which I'm a huge fan of. It'll make recycling an end-of-life phone much easier, and that's a huge deal. This is the easiest battery removal that Samsung has ever made. However, while Apple iPhones are out there in the real world using 100% recycled cobalt and 95% recycled lithium in their batteries, Samsung is over here only using 50% recycled cobalt, which is kind of a rookie number, and I hope to see Samsung improve on that next year. With the battery gone, we get our first glimpse at the 40% larger copper vapor chamber, still semi-hidden under the blue motherboard. I'll continue by removing 3 more Phillips head screws on the charging port board. This time around, we have a red rubber ring around the 45-watt USB-C port, as well as a green rubber cushion on the underside. Right between the charging port and the SIM card tray is the microphone hole. And to clarify, since I get this question a lot, no, you cannot damage your smartphone in any way by accidentally putting your SIM card removal tool into the microphone hole. Yeah, it does fit, but not only does it stop before it can reach the end of the shaft, but also the waterproofing for that microphone hole is placed to the side of the shaft and not at the end. So unless you accidentally take a power drill to the microphone hole and remove an entire chunk of the frame, which sounds kind of fun, it should be just fine. No SIM card removal tool will ever cause any damage, and every phone I've ever taken apart has these same protections. Manufacturers know that us users aren't always firing on all cylinders. I'll remove the upper stereo loudspeaker. It has a pinkish gasket around the entirety of the speaker grill, with a lot of that waterproofing screen mesh over the opening. And in a positive sign for a clean audio experience, Samsung has included foam balls in the upper speaker as well. I'll remove the 5G antenna plug, the front-facing camera ribbon, and the 2 screws holding in the camera modules. Then the whole dual-stacked motherboard can come up and away from the phone body. Jiggling the top 50-megapixel ultra-wide camera reveals it does not have OIS. The 200-megapixel main camera has optical stabilization through the roof, thumbs up for that. And the lower 50-megapixel 5x periscope telephoto camera also supposedly has OIS, but it's internal so we can't see it. The 10-megapixel 3x telephoto over on the right does have external OIS, which we can see. It's a pretty impressive suite of cameras. The flash is a single-color LED right below the laser autofocus modules. The front-facing 12-megapixel camera is very securely glued into the frame, and since I prefer to be gentle with my smartphones, I won't disturb it for the time being. One thing Samsung mentioned during the S25 Ultra launch event is that they have a new thermal interface material, or TIM for short. The tailored TIM material helps cool the internal processors by keeping a gapless connection from the chips to that large vapor chamber, making heat transfer faster. Air is actually a pretty good heat insulator, which is why jackets are puffy and socks are fluffy. Any air gaps near the processors would inhibit that heat transfer, where this thermal TIM stuff lets the heat pass to the vapor chamber with no air to get in the way. My phone will probably still function without it, of course, since it's not essential to functionality. It'll probably just throttle sooner since the thermal paste is gone. Hopefully we'll find out here in a second. The TIM material is caked on pretty good though, and I bet it'll work great. Now, the copper vapor chamber isn't really anything new, and this isn't even the largest vapor chamber we've ever seen. I'm pretty sure that record lies with OnePlus, who stacked 2 vapor chambers on top of each other, or pretty much any of the other gaming phones that go all out on cooling. But it's still interesting to see. There is a small amount of liquid inside, like a singular drip of deionized water, which gets vaporized as the processors heat up. The vapor flows to the end of the pouch to cool down and gets wicked back by the internal copper mesh to repeat the cycle. It's a pretty cool process. And I'm not gonna lie, after seeing the internals and the externals, this year's S25 Ultra just seems kinda like a downgrade from last year's S24 Ultra. Smartphone manufacturers talk a big game about recycling and saving the planet, but the biggest thing they could do for Earth, by far, is to just take a gap year. Skip trying to sell us new and improved buzzword-riddled smartphones every year when it's just really not all that different, and in this case, worse than last year. Smartphone marketing would be a heck of a lot easier if we went back to the biannual upgrade schedule. Can you imagine the hype of a new Samsung phone after 2 whole years of cooking in silence? Anyway, those are just my thoughts, but I'm just a dude with a screwdriver who can usually put things back together. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and thanks a ton for watching. I'll see you around.